How do the DEAD drill, the axiom, C4, goat theory, goat study, how does all this stuff tie together? It's one of the biggest questions I've gotten asked, and I want to explain it now and help you understand really just how simple what the GOAT code really is, because it's shockingly simple. But let me explain how all this stuff works together first. The DEAD drill was basically nothing more than teaching you first how to understand how to move your body. So this is the whole backswing, shift back to the left, post up. That was the first 3 steps of the DEAD drill. Then we add the arm, the left arm, then we add the club, then we add the right arm, and that's the whole golf swing. It was a way of thinking about the swing, learning the swing step by step through mechanics. Now here's the catch with that stuff, and here's what we saw after doing tens of thousands of swing reviews. We would see guys and gals who could do these drills really, really well. And some of them would translate that to feel. Others wouldn't. They would keep feeling mechanical and look, stuck and rigid and robotic. And what I realized was that the right mechanics will sometimes translate to the right feeling for certain golfers. But the right feeling will always translate to the right mechanics. And that's a huge dichotomy between those two ideas, because mechanics, for some people, they can take it and they're like, oh yeah, I get it. I'm supposed to move like this. Okay, cool. And then they can go out and play great golf. And then others get stuck in that mechanical mode and feeling rigid and thinking their way logically through the golf swing, and your brain just simply can't keep up. Enter the axiom. The axiom was simply my first attempt to teach you how to make those mechanical things happen in your golf swing automatically through feel. And for some of you, that made a world of sense. I got, it's the holy grail of golf and all those thousands of comments that you saw. But again, not for everyone. Not everybody could translate this into the right feeling. So as I kept working and studying and spent the last 4 years studying really just how the arms and body work together, and what the ideal way to do it is, I started studying more about the greats, and that's where the GOAT theory came from. Of course, many of you know, I'm a huge Tiger fan, at least of his golf swing, and because, really more than anything, it's always looked so simple. When you look at this swing from the early 2000s, he's just barely moving. He's moving so much less than everybody else, and that's what I've always thought about in terms of his golf swing, is that he's just doing things simpler. And so as I started studying this, I started looking at the swings of Bobby Jones and Nicklaus again. You guys know I grew up on Nicklaus, and I hung on every word he said growing up because I watched his golf My Way tapes thousands of times as a kid. And I started looking at the similarities and dissimilarities between the greatest golfers of all time. And that's where the GOAT theory came in, and I started trying to understand what is it they're really doing. Now, mechanically, it's not exactly rocket science to understand what the greatest players of all time did in their swing, what great golfers of today do. There's so many more similarities and dissimilarities, and of course we have all these fancy tools now that can measure everything and tell us exactly what they're doing. The trick of it all is, what do they feel? Because none of these golfers, Jones, Hogan, Snead, any of these great players, they didn't learn through mechanics, which is how everybody's trying to learn the golf swing today, because it makes sense. If you understand the mechanical movements of the swing, then surely you should be able to translate the feel. But as I said, not everybody can. So what I started really wanting to understand is, what does Tiger's swing feel like? What is it that he feels in his golf swing? Now, unfortunately, he's not the most cooperative in this environment. Even tour pros think that he's speaking another language.
Up there.
Do you feel it in your arms? You feel it?
Yeah, how do you regulate distance?
How do you regulate?
I just slow it down, and I feel all in my hands. So I slow my speed of my hands down.
And can you explain things just like a normal person? Oh my gosh.
When you listen to Tiger talk about his swing, or Nicklaus, and I love Nicklaus's Golf My Way tapes because he says the whole backswing, he describes the whole thing in 3 minutes. And the first 2.5 minutes of that is just telling you all the things that most golfers typically do as mistakes. And the last 30 seconds he says, all I got to do is try to move my arms, club, and body together as one. Now, that's not very helpful either. So when I started really trying to understand what they felt, the only way to do that was to experience it. I had to feel it for myself because they can't describe what they feel. And if you've ever been around great players who have not really taken a mechanical deep dive down the golf swing as most amateurs have, they really have no idea what they're doing in their swing. And they don't really want to know. It's almost a taboo subject. When I worked with a lot of tour pros back in the day, a lot of them really didn't want to take lessons. They were so afraid that they would lose it because they've seen so many stories and known so many friends. And I've known dozens of people who were on the tour, like the old Young Guns. You guys probably remember that from Golf Digest or Golf Magazine, one of those things, posted clips of, or on the cover, like these young, hot tour players. None of them are on the tour anymore because they all started working on their swings and got very mechanical with it, and then they just all got lost. And now they're out playing in mini tour events, if they're playing at all anymore. So for amateur golfers, they just kind of keep the struggle going because they're not making their living doing this, but they keep trying to figure out how do the tour pros make it look so simple. And with the GOAT code, and as I started to feel and experience it for myself, I couldn't believe how simple it really was. And there were many misconceptions about the golf swing. And really when it comes down to it, it's always about power. The reason that your golf swing does or doesn't work is what your power source is. It's really that simple in my mind. Because if you start trying to produce power the wrong way, your swing will always fall apart. You can have the most beautiful, elegant backswing in the world or practice swing in the world. And if you're one of those guys who, you feel like you're like Sam Snead in your practice swing, and then you go to hit a ball and you look like an octopus falling out of a tree, to quote David Faraday. The reason is that you don't have the right power source, and it's typically moving inefficiently, trying to use the body incorrectly, using the hands incorrectly, and what have you. So what I really tried to deep dive down first, to really understand Tiger's swing and really internalize it, to feel it, to know what it really feels like, I had to first understand what his power source was. And that was the hardest thing because A, he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't feel it, he just does it because he's been doing it, as I showed you guys, since he was 5, so nothing's really changed there. So if you've been doing the same thing for 40-something years, it's just normal for you. There's no other way for you to do it. So it's so hard for tour pros to describe what they're doing to the average Joe in a way that they can take it and be like, oh, if Tiger just told me what I was supposed to feel in my swing, I could do it. And I saw many comments from you guys in the forum about, man, if I could just step in Tiger's body for 5 minutes and hit balls, I would know what it's supposed to feel like. I wanted to do the exact same thing. So that's what I've been doing. And to understand that power source, as you guys saw, was really counterintuitive. And as I've explained many, many times, I think of the golf swing in terms of power as just an equation. You've got leverage, you've got rotation, and you've got width. And that's really basically it. Those are the 3 primary sources of power. Now, there's no wrong or right way per se to put those together. You can have a ton of leverage in your swing, which is the angles, right? If you have a lot of angle in your wrist coming down to impact really late, you've got a lot of leverage available to you. You just got to get rid of it in time. And then you wouldn't need as much rotation and you wouldn't need as much width, because if you have a lot of leverage, your swing gets a little bit narrower. And then if you have a lot of width, you don't need as much leverage. These two counterbalance each other out. So the equation is just kind of always how you choose to balance it. But when I'm trying to match somebody's movement patterns identically, like I was with Tiger's swing, I had to know exactly what his power sources were and what that equation, what that algorithm looked like. And what I came to discover, which was pretty obvious when you look at his swing now, that it's always been very, very, very wide without that much leverage in his swing. As I showed in one of the previous videos, like right before impact with the driver, Tiger's got nothing in his wrist. There's no leverage here at all. So once I understood that his equation was way more width, way less leverage, and you don't need much rotation at all, this equation started to balance out in my mind. And once I began to feel that, like so many of you have, where you're saying, I've never felt this kind of effortless power in my swing. I've got my swing back. It feels natural. It feels effortless. That's when I started to realize that having a really, really Tiger-esque golf swing from the early 2000s was honestly, in my opinion, the simplest way to swing the golf club. He's truly just moving, as I described in the body movement video in the 5-part series about the lateral move and the way his arms move in the backswing and then throwing from the top and lateral coming down. It's so shockingly simple, and it's truly just feel-based, as so many of you guys have discovered just in the past week. Now, one thing that I've noticed is some of you in the comments have said, well, I still am struggling with something, and I know what's causing it. Because if your backswing is out of whack, and what I mean by that, 9 times out of 10, when somebody says, okay, this all makes perfect sense to me, but I'm not doing it right. 9 times out of 10, they're taking the club back like this or like this, opening the face, pointing it to the sky. The wrist is either cupped at the top or close to flat, but when it's generally cupped, then the wrist can set a lot more, so you've got a lot more leverage at the top of your swing. But this also opens the face unless you've got a really strong grip. And so now from here, as I go to throw, that club face is still open because I haven't started to flatten out this wrist and do any supination. So from here, if I throw it, well, the face is still open. And when you throw it like this and you sense the face is open, your body tends to not move laterally, which you have to do. As I showed you in that clip of Nicholas, he felt that he could throw it as hard as he could from the top as long as he was moving to the left. When people are going through and experiencing this throw for the first time and they feel the face open, well, if they move left, they would just hold the face open even more. So what they're doing is throwing and hanging back and hitting it fat with an open face because they're trying to give it time for the club head to catch up with their hands. The trick to all this stuff is the backswing is so much simpler than that. To swing exactly the way Tiger took the club back in 2000 is shockingly simple. And what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to show you in the member video, is that it's really just moving your hands and club in what initially look like, but more importantly feel like, a straight line. What I see 9 times out of 10 is that golfers start moving the club around, and this will either, again, get the club deep and open going back, and then as you get to the top, this wrist is going to be out of control. What Tiger's doing in this 2000 swing, and what I was able to, when I was able to get really close to matching it, is really feeling like my hands move straight back, the club head moves straight back, and that continues all the way to the top with a flat left wrist. And once you have that, there's really very little that you can do, because from here, once you're in this position, it's a lateral shift while you're throwing, and that's the whole golf swing. So that's what I'm going to show you in this premium video for members, is how to get this right, how to get this feeling of the club moving back in a straight line, the hands moving back in a straight line. As you can see in Tiger's swing, you just draw little tunnels for the hands to travel on and the club to travel on. And once you understand what that's really supposed to feel like, then you won't have all this crazy stuff. You'll be able to shift back to the left. You won't have the face wide open at the top because you're going to be moving less. That's the whole key. So in this next video, I'll put a link down in the comments down below. It'll help you fully understand that the backswing, if you've got the backswing right, it's lateral, straight with the hands, vertical, this is it. From here, all I have to do is throw while shifting laterally, and the whole golf swing's done. That is how simple Tiger's 2000 swing really is. So click the link down below or click to the next video, and I'm going to show you just how simple the backswing is. And if you're struggling with hitting it fat or having the face open, make sure you watch this video because you're going to finally understand what it's like to have a perfect, simple backswing.